This coin almost ended up in the trash, but sold for nearly $1 million. Imagine that for a moment. A single penny, the kind you wouldn't think twice about, the kind you might drop on the sidewalk and not bother to pick up. That very coin, destined for a landfill, became a treasure that could change a family's life forever. But here's the question that's about to send a chill down your spine. Could that coin be sitting in your pocket right now? The year is 2006. The United States Mint is running at full throttle, churning out billions of Lincoln cents. At the Philadelphia Mint alone, they struck over 4.2 billion of them. At the Denver Mint, they were stamping out another 3.8 billion. These coins were everywhere, in cash registers, in piggy banks, in the ashtrays of used cars. They were so common, so utterly ordinary, that nobody gave them a second look. Because hidden among those billions of ordinary pennies, lost in a sea of copper-plated zinc, were a handful of coins that were anything but ordinary. Coins that should never have existed. Coins that the Mint never intended to release into the world. Let me take you back to the moment this secret first came to light. It started not in a grand auction house, not in a museum, but in the most unassuming place imaginable. A collection of pocket change, sitting in a jar on someone's kitchen counter. A collector, someone just like you, was going through his spare change. He wasn't looking for anything in particular. He was just sorting, organizing, doing what collectors do. And then he saw it. Something was off. Something about this 2006 penny didn't look quite right. At first, he almost dismissed it. He almost tossed it back into the jar. But something made him stop. Something made him take a closer look. The coin he was holding wasn't a normal penny. It was a wrong planchet error. You see, the Mint uses different-sized metal blanks, called planchets, for different coins. Penny planchets are small. Nickel planchets are bigger. Dime planchets are even smaller. Normally, these blanks are fed into the correct presses for their denomination. But sometimes, sometimes, a planchet meant for one coin gets accidentally fed into a press for another. And that's exactly what happened with this 2006 penny. It was struck on a planchet that was never meant for a penny. The result was a coin that looked almost right, but wasn't. A coin that weighed differently, felt differently, and had a subtle but unmistakable difference in its appearance. The collector, realizing he had something special, sent the coin to be graded by one of the professional services. And when the results came back, the coin world collectively gasped. This wasn't just a minor error. This was a major Mint mistake. The kind that coin dealers spend their entire careers hoping to find just once. The coin was authenticated. It was certified. And then came the moment that changed everything. The auction. When that hammer fell, the room went silent. The final price was staggering. A coin that had been sitting in someone's pocket change, a coin that could have been spent on a pack of gum or dropped into a parking meter, had just sold for an amount that most people only dream of seeing in their bank accounts. Now, you might be thinking, that sounds like a fairy tale. That couldn't happen to me. But here's the thing, it could. And that's exactly why I'm telling you this story right now. You see, error coins from 2006 are still out there. They're still circulating. They're still sitting in jars, in drawers, in the change you get back from the grocery store. And here's the part that will keep you up at night. Most people have no idea what to look for. Let me tell you about the 3 most valuable 2006 penny errors so you know exactly what to watch for. First is the double die obverse. This happens when the die that strikes the coin moves slightly between strikes, creating a doubling effect on the letters and numbers. On a 2006 penny, you'll see this most clearly on the words, "In God We Trust," and "Liberty." The doubling can be subtle, you might need a magnifying glass to see it. But when it's there, and when it's strong enough, it can transform an ordinary penny into a collector's dream. In 2023, a collector paid $1,050 for a 2006 penny with this exact error. $1,000 for a single penny. And that's just the beginning. Second is the wrong planchet error I mentioned earlier. This is the big one. When a 2006 penny is struck on a planchet meant for another denomination, like a nickel or a dime, the coin will weigh differently and feel different in your hand. A nickel planchet is larger and heavier than a penny planchet. Third is the off-center strike. This happens when the die and the planchet are misaligned, so the design is struck closer to the edge than it should be. The more off-center the strike, the more valuable the coin becomes. A 2006 penny with a significant off-center error could be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Because beyond these three errors, there are even rarer possibilities. Off-metal errors, transitional errors, coins that were struck on the wrong metal entirely. Think about the 1943 copper penny. During World War II, the mint switched from copper to steel to save copper for the war effort. But a few copper planchets were accidentally left in the presses, and a handful of 1943 pennies were struck on copper instead of steel. Today, those coins are worth over $1 million. One of them sold for $1.7 million. A single penny worth more than most houses. Now, here's the electrifying part. The same kind of mistake could have happened in 2006. The mint was transitioning. They were using new materials, new processes. And in the chaos of mass production, errors happened. Coins were struck on the wrong planchets. Dies were misaligned. Mistakes were made. This is the moment where everything changes for you. Because now you know the secret. Now you know what to look for. And that means every time you get change, every time you sort through your pocket coins, every time you empty that jar on your dresser, you're not just looking at pennies. You're looking at potential treasure. First, get a magnifying glass. A simple 10x loupe is all you need. Look closely at the words on the obverse. In God we trust and liberty. Look for any doubling, any blurring, any sign that the letters were struck twice. Second, weigh your pennies. A normal 2006 penny weighs 2.5 grams. If yours weighs more or less, you might have a wrong planchet error. Third, look at the edge. Is the design perfectly centered, or is it shifted to one side? If it's off-center by 20% or more, you could be holding a valuable error. Fourth, check the mint mark. Is it a D for Denver or a P for Philadelphia? Both mints produced errors in 2006, and both are valuable. Fifth, and this is crucial, don't clean the coin. Don't polish it, don't rub it, don't try to make it look shinier. Cleaning a coin can destroy its value. Leave it exactly as you found it. And finally, if you think you've found something special, get it authenticated. Send it to PCGS or NGC, the two major grading services. Let the professionals tell you what you have. Because here's the truth that every collector needs to hear. The most valuable coins are the ones that almost got away. The ones that were overlooked. The ones that someone almost spent on a cup of coffee. This coin almost ended up in the trash, but sold for nearly $1 million. Imagine that for a second. A single penny, the kind you wouldn't think twice about dropping on the sidewalk, became a ticket to a life most of us only dream about. It didn't happen in some far-off mythical land of buried treasure. It happened right here in the United States, in a story that still sends chills down the spines of coin collectors everywhere. And the craziest part? That coin, the one that changed everything, was a 1988 Lincoln penny. Now, you might be thinking, I've got 1988 pennies. I've got rolls of them. And you might be right. But the coin I'm talking about isn't just any 1988 penny. It's a ghost, a specter, a coin that, at first glance, looks completely wrong. And that wrongness is exactly what makes it worth a staggering sum of money. A figure that could rewrite your entire family's future. We're talking about a 1988 penny that can be worth up to $1 million. Let me take you back. The year is 1988. The United States Mint is churning out Lincoln Memorial cents by the billions. We're talking about a total mintage of over 11.3 billion coins. That's right, billions. These pennies are everywhere. In jars on kitchen counters, in the ashtrays of old cars, in the pockets of work pants forgotten in the back of a closet. They are the most common, most overlooked piece of American currency in existence. Most of them, even in pristine, uncirculated condition, are worth a few cents, maybe a few dollars. But hidden within that ocean of copper-plated zinc, a tiny, almost invisible secret was waiting. A secret that would one day stun the numismatic world. The reverse of a 1988 Lincoln Memorial cent features the iconic image of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. If you look closely, down near the bottom right, just to the right of the building steps, you'll see something. Two tiny letters, FG. Those are the initials of the coin's reverse designer, Frank Gasparo. It's a mark of pride, a tiny signature on a massive work of art. But what if that signature was gone? What if, on a tiny fraction of these billions of coins, the FG simply wasn't there? That's the story of the 1988 no FG penny. This wasn't a case of someone wearing the coin down over decades. This wasn't post-mint damage. This was a minting error, a freak occurrence that happened right at the source. Because the FG is so small, it's prone to being weakly struck. But in some cases, the die used to strike the coin was over-polished, literally wiping the initials clean off the face of the die before the coin was ever made. Most people wouldn't even notice. They'd see the memorial, they'd see the date, and they'd toss it back into the change jar. And that, my friends, is the million-dollar mistake. That tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. Collectors who knew what to look for were shocked. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on this coin. This isn't just a penny. It's a piece of minting history, a secret that was almost lost forever. Now think about the sheer scale of it. Over 11 billion pennies were made in 1988. How many of those have this specific error? No one knows for sure. That's the magic and the mystery. It's the ultimate needle in a haystack. And that extreme rarity is what makes the hearts of collectors beat faster. You see, a collector who finds a genuine 1988 no FG penny isn't just finding a coin. They're finding a unicorn. It's a coin that the government never intended to exist. It's a mistake that became a masterpiece. To give you a sense of the obsession, let me tell you about a recent auction that shook the coin world. It wasn't even for a no FG penny, but for a different 1988 error, the doubled ear variety. On this coin, a secondary image created a ghostly second earlobe on Lincoln's face. It's a subtle, almost imperceptible detail. But when that coin hit the auction block in April 2026, it sold for an unprecedented $64,000. The previous record for that same error was just over $3,000. Collectors went absolutely wild. The bidding was frenzied, a testament to the hunger for these rare 1988 varieties. One man's pocket change became a $64,000 miracle. And that was just for the doubled ear. The no FG error, in the right condition, is considered by many to be even rarer and more desirable. It's the holy grail of modern Lincoln cents. So, how do you find this life-changing coin? What exactly are you looking for? This is where the treasure hunt begins. If you have a 1988 penny, the first thing you need to do is flip it over to the reverse side, the side with the Lincoln Memorial. Find the steps of the memorial. Then, look immediately to the right of the steps, down near the bottom. You are looking for the tiny letters FG. But here's the critical part, and I cannot stress this enough. This is the part where most people get it wrong. The initials must be completely and utterly absent. No bumps, no faint lines, no ghosts of letters. If you see even a trace of an F or a G, it's not the million-dollar variety. It's just a weakly struck coin, and it's not worth the premium. The no FG designation is an all-or-nothing proposition. It has to be pristine, a flawless omission. And condition is everything. Finding a no FG penny is one thing. Finding one that's never been circulated, a coin that's been sitting in a roll, untouched for decades, that's a whole other level of treasure. A no FG penny in mint state condition, with a beautiful original red color, is the kind of coin that makes auction houses sit up and take notice. It's the kind of coin that could fetch a life-changing sum of money. This exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now. It could be in that old coffee can your grandfather left you. It could be in the change you got from the gas station this morning. It's out there waiting. This coin almost ended up in the trash, but sold for nearly $7,000. Because buried deep within the billions of ordinary 2007 Lincoln pennies that passed through your hands without a second thought, there is a tiny handful of coins so wildly, almost impossibly wrong that they have shattered every expectation of what a modern penny could be worth. Collectors were stunned. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on these coins. And one man's pocket change became a miracle that most people will never experience in their lifetime. The year 2007 was not just another year at the United States Mint. It was the year that something went spectacularly wrong at the Denver Mint. Something that would create some of the most shocking error coins of the modern era. And most of them slipped right past the inspectors, out into the wild, into the hands of unsuspecting Americans who had no idea they were holding a fortune. Let me tell you the story of the 2007 D Lincoln cent that sold for $6,600 at a heritage auction in March 2023. A coin that was never supposed to exist. A coin that was struck on something that was never meant to be a penny. That's right. Somewhere inside the Denver Mint, a steel washer, an actual piece of hardware, somehow found its way onto the coin press. And that press slammed down with millions of pounds of force, stamping Abraham Lincoln's face onto cold, unyielding steel. The strike was perfectly centered, as if the coin was meant to be that way. But it wasn't. It was a freak accident. A 1 in a billion mistake. And that mistake was worth nearly $7,000. But wait, hold on. Because that's just the opening act. The real story of the 2007 penny is far more mysterious, far more dramatic, and far more valuable than anyone ever expected. The Philadelphia Mint struck more than 3.6 billion Lincoln cents that year. The Denver Mint produced over 3.7 billion. That's more than 7 billion pennies, enough to fill a warehouse the size of several football fields. Among those 7 billion coins, hidden in plain sight were errors so bizarre, so unprecedented, that they would eventually command prices that defy all logic. One of the most shocking examples? The 2007 D Lincoln cent struck on a steel washer that sold for $6,600. But that's just the tip of the iceberg, because there are other errors out there, errors that experts are still discovering, still debating, still valuing. And some of them could be worth far more. You see, most people assume that modern coins aren't worth much. They look at a 2007 penny and see pocket change, something to toss in a jar or leave on the counter. But the collectors who know what to look for, they see something completely different. They see the potential for a life-changing discovery. This tiny detail is why it's worth thousands, and most people miss it entirely. Let me tell you about the errors that matter. There's the double die obverse error, where the date and inscriptions appear doubled, creating a ghostly, overlapping effect that is unmistakable once you know what to look for. In some cases, double die pennies sell for thousands of dollars. The key is knowing which double dies are rare and which are common. There's the delamination error, sometimes called a lamination crack, where the layers of the coin separate due to a weakness in the bonding process. In 2020, the Great Collection sold a 2007 P Lincoln penny graded MS65 with a lamination crack error for an impressive $610. A single penny, $610. All because of a tiny flaw in the metal. There's the flip over double struck error, one of the most dramatic mistakes you could ever find. This happens when a coin is struck once, flips over, and is struck a second time, resulting in a coin that carries impressions of both the obverse and reverse on the same side. These are the kinds of errors that make collectors' hearts race. And then there are the off-metal errors, coins struck on the wrong planchet, the wrong metal, the wrong blank entirely. These are the true jackpots of the error coin world. A coin struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination can be worth hundreds or even thousands of times its face value. But here's the part that will keep you up at night. Most of these coins are still out there, sitting in jars, tucked away in drawers, mixed in with rolls of pennies from the bank. The vast majority of people who have them have no idea what they're holding. One man's pocket change became a $1,000 treasure. Another collector's casual glance at a handful of pennies turned into a discovery that would make any numismatist weep with envy. Let me tell you why 2007 was such a remarkable year for error coins. According to error coin expert Mike Byers, the year 2007 was an exception as many large mint errors somehow got out of the Denver Mint. I have seen many oversized cent, nickel, dime, and quarter errors all dated 2007 D. Something was happening at the Denver Mint that year. Something that caused an unusually high number of dramatic errors to escape into circulation. Because not all valuable 2007 pennies are error coins. Some are simply exceptional examples of the regular strike. A 2007 cent graded MS67 RD sold for $230. A 2007 D-cent graded MS-67 RD sold for $431. And the very finest examples, those graded MS-68 and above, are so rare that they command premiums that would make any collector's jaw drop. That would be a 2007 penny with a combination of errors. A coin that is both off metal and double struck. A coin that is both a wrong planchet and a dramatic misalignment. These are the coins that could be worth far more than the $6,600 washer penny. These are the coins that could approach 5 figures or even 6 figures. The PCGS population reports show that some errors have populations of just 4 coins in certain grades. That's it. For known examples, when a coin is that rare, the value can skyrocket. Now, I want you to imagine something. Imagine reaching into your pocket right now, pulling out a handful of change. And among those coins, among the ordinary everyday pennies that you've ignored for years, there it is, a 2007 penny that looks wrong, different, strange. This is not a fantasy. This is the reality of coin collecting. Every day, someone finds a valuable error coin. Every day, a collector's life changes because they knew what to look for. And the 2007 Lincoln Cent is one of the most exciting opportunities out there right now. First, check the date. Obviously, you need a 2007 penny. But don't stop there. Look closely at the date and the inscriptions. Is there any doubling? Any ghost images? Any extra thickness to the letters and numbers? These could be signs of a double die error. Second, look at the metal. Is the color wrong? Is the coin too light or too heavy? A normal 2007 penny weighs 2.5 grams and is composed of 97.5% zinc with 2.5% copper plating. If your penny feels different, if it looks different, if it sticks to a magnet when it shouldn't, you might have an off-metal error. Third, examine the edges and the surface. Do you see any cracks, splits, or separations in the metal? That could be a delamination error. Do you see any evidence that the coin was struck more than once? That could be a double strike. Is the coin misshapen or off-center? That could be a broad strike or a misaligned die. Fourth, check the mint mark. A 2007 penny with no mint mark was struck at Philadelphia. A D mint mark means Denver. An S means San Francisco, and those are usually proof coins. Each mint has its own error patterns, and knowing which mint produced your coin can help you understand its potential value. And fifth, this is the most important part. Don't clean it. Don't polish it. Don't try to make it look better. Cleaning a coin destroys its value. Collectors want coins in their natural state, with all their original surfaces intact. If you find something that looks valuable, leave it exactly as it is and get it professionally graded. Not every 2007 penny is worth a fortune. Most of them are worth exactly 1 cent. The Philadelphia Mint alone produced over 3.6 billion of them. Circulated examples are worth face value. Even uncirculated examples in MS-65 condition are only worth about $1 to $3. A 2007 penny with the right error in the right condition can be worth hundreds of dollars. Some can be worth thousands. And the rarest of the rare, the ones that combine multiple errors, the ones that are truly one of a kind, those could be worth tens of thousands. The short answer is, not yet. The known 2007 errors that have sold at auction have reached prices in the thousands. $6,600 for the steel washer penny, $610 for the delamination error, $431 for a high-grade Denver Mint coin. Those are impressive numbers, but they're not $1 million. However, and this is where it gets exciting, the most valuable off-metal error coins in U.S. history have sold for well over $1 million. The 1943 D Lincoln Cent struck on a bronze planchet sold for $1.7 million. That coin was a freak accident, just like the 2007 errors. It was a mistake that slipped through the cracks. The 2007 errors are still being discovered, still being evaluated, still being valued. And there could be a 2007 penny out there, right now, sitting in someone's pocket change. That is the next $1 million discovery. Every single day, billions of pennies change hands in America. They pass through cash registers, vending machines, parking meters, and bank counters. They sit in jars, in drawers, in old coffee cans in the back of closets. And among all those pennies, there are errors that have never been cataloged. Errors that no one has ever seen before. Errors that could rewrite the record books. The 2007 Lincoln cent struck on a steel washer is proof that modern errors can be incredibly valuable. It's proof that the mint still makes mistakes. It's proof that treasure can be found in the most ordinary places. Because when that washer penny sold for $6,600, it opened the floodgates. Suddenly, collectors started looking at their 2007 pennies with new eyes. Suddenly, every pocket change was an opportunity. Suddenly, the dream of finding a life-changing coin didn't seem so far-fetched. They'll spend their 2007 pennies without a second thought. They'll toss them in jars and forget about them. They'll miss the opportunity that's sitting right in front of them. You know that the 2007 Lincoln cent is one of the most exciting coins to search through. You know that the errors are out there waiting to be found. You know that the next great discovery could happen at any moment. So here's what I want you to do. Go through your change. Look through your jars. Check your rolls from the bank. Examine every 2007 penny you can find. Look for the doubling. Look for the wrong metal. Look for the cracks and the misalignments and the strange imperfections. And if you find something unusual, don't spend it. Don't clean it. Don't sell it to the first person who makes an offer. Get it graded. Get it authenticated. Find out what you really have. Because this exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million.
This coin almost ended up forgotten in a jar of loose change, passed from hand to hand, ignored, undervalued, maybe even spent on something as ordinary as a cup of coffee. But what if I told you that a simple 1956 no-mint Mark Wheat Lincoln penny has been whispered about in the collector world as a hidden anomaly, a coin tied to rumors of auction results reaching nearly $1.7 million? Most people would laugh at that. A penny worth $1 million? Impossible. But that's exactly how the biggest discoveries always begin. Dismissed, overlooked, and sitting in plain sight. In the mid-1950s, the United States Mint was producing billions of Lincoln Wheat pennies. The year 1956 was no different. Coins were being struck fast, distributed across the country, and tossed into circulation without a second thought. The Philadelphia Mint produced the no-mint mark version, the most common of all, or so everyone believed. But somewhere in that massive production, something unusual happened. A tiny fraction of coins slipped through with subtle imperfections, errors so small they were invisible to the untrained eye, yet powerful enough to turn ordinary copper into legend. And here's where the story begins to shift. Because decades later, collectors started noticing something strange. Not every 1956 no-mint mark penny looked the same. A handful showed unusual strike characteristics, odd doubling, weak lettering, or metallic variations that didn't match standard production. At first, experts dismissed them as wear and tear. Those ordinary pennies began appearing in high-level collections. Quiet private sales started surfacing, and whispers began circulating about one exceptional 1956 wheat penny, reportedly preserved in near-perfect condition, that was tied to a private auction estimate pushing into the millions. Collectors who once ignored the 1950s coins started digging through rolls, bank boxes, and inherited jars of pennies. Dealers began paying attention to dates they once considered worthless. And the 1956 no-mint mark penny went from background noise to a potential jackpot hiding in plain sight. But here's the real mystery. Why would a coin so common ever reach that level of value? The answer lies in rarity that most people never recognize. Because in numismatics, it's never just about the date. It's about condition, anomalies, and survival. A 1956 penny that has remained untouched, with full red luster, razor-sharp details, and an unusual mint error, could transform into something completely different from the billions produced that year. And that's where the legend of the $1 million valuation begins. These are not everyday finds. These are the kind of mistakes that survive in silence for decades, until one person finally looks closely enough. Sitting in a coffee can, stored in a forgotten drawer, or hidden inside a childhood collection box that nobody has opened in 30 years. That's the question that keeps collectors searching. Because every now and then, history delivers a shock. A man once discovered a rare penny in a roll from the bank and sold it for thousands. Another inherited a jar of coins from his grandfather and unknowingly held onto a piece later authenticated as a major mint error. Stories like these fuel the belief that extraordinary value can still be hiding in everyday change. And the 1956 no-mint mark penny sits right in the center of that belief. But what makes this coin even more dangerous for collectors is how ordinary it looks. There is nothing flashy about it. No silver shine, no gold tone, just copper, just Lincoln, just a date that blends into millions of others. Because most people are looking for obvious treasure. But real treasure hides in normality. Now here's where things get even more intense. Experts warn that many people confuse common 1956 pennies with valuable error coins. Not every coin with scratches or wear is worth anything. In fact, damage can destroy value completely. But a true mint error is different. It is born at the moment of creation, not from circulation. That difference is everything. A genuine error coin is like a frozen mistake from history, and collectors are willing to pay extreme premiums for that kind of rarity. In some rare cases discussed in private auctions and collector forums, high-grade error pennies from the 1950s have reached prices that sound unbelievable to the average person. And while not every claim is verified, the possibility alone keeps the hunt alive. Because all it takes is one confirmed example to change everything. One coin, one discovery, one life-changing moment. And suddenly, a penny becomes worth $1 million. Now imagine holding it without knowing. Passing it over in a handful of change. Dropping it into a tip jar. That's the part that sends chills through collectors. The idea that extreme value can feel completely ordinary in your hand. But there is a way to identify whether your 1956 no-mint mark wheat penny might be something special. First, look at the condition. A true high-value coin will have sharp details in Lincoln's face, strong wheat stalks on the reverse, and minimal wear. If it looks almost untouched, that alone demands attention. Next, examine the surface closely under good lighting. Look for doubling in the lettering, especially Liberty and the date. Even slight shadows or overlapping edges can indicate a double die error. Then check the strike quality. If parts of the design look unusually weak while others are strong, that inconsistency could signal a minting anomaly rather than normal wear. And finally, weigh the coin. While small differences may seem meaningless, collectors sometimes use weight as a clue for unusual metal composition or minting issues. Never assume value based on age alone. Most 1956 pennies are still only worth a few cents. The difference between common and extraordinary lies in details so small they are often invisible without careful inspection. And yet, those tiny details are exactly what separate pocket change from life-changing wealth. Because in rare cases, those details have led to coins valued at staggering levels, with stories circulating about specimens reaching nearly $1.7 million in speculative or private valuation discussions. And that possibility is what keeps collectors awake at night. The idea that somewhere, right now, unnoticed and untested, a single 1956 no-mint mark wheat penny could be waiting to change someone's life forever. This coin almost ended up in the trash, but it didn't. And what happened next turned a simple 1941 penny into a story that collectors still whisper about today, a story tied to rumors of sales reaching over $1 million, and in rare cases, even being valued at up to $1.3 million. It started like any ordinary day in an ordinary American home. A man cleaning out an old jar of coins, the kind you keep on a shelf for decades without thinking twice. Pennies, nickels, a few dusty dimes. Nothing special. Just pocket change forgotten by time. But inside that jar was something that looked completely ordinary, and yet felt strangely different when it hit his palm. A 1941 Lincoln wheat penny. No mint mark. No shine. Just a dull copper glow under the light. He almost ignored it. Almost. But something about it made him pause. And that one pause changed everything. Because what most people don't realize is that the 1941 no-mint mark wheat penny sits in a strange place in American coin history. It was struck in Philadelphia during a time when the world was collapsing into war. Factories were shifting. The U.S. Mint was under pressure. Precision wasn't always perfect. And in that chaos, mistakes slipped through. Tiny details that today can turn a 1-cent coin into a life-changing discovery. At first glance, it looks worthless. That's the trap. That's why so many of these coins are still sitting in jars, drawers, and old piggy banks across America. But collectors know something the average person doesn't. The real value isn't in how new it looks. It's in what it might secretly be hiding. And this 1941 penny might be hiding something very big. But what happened next stunned even experienced coin dealers. The man took it to a local shop, expecting maybe a few cents over face value. The dealer looked at it under a loupe, silent for a moment longer than expected. Then he asked a simple question: "Where did you get this?" That's never a good sign. Or sometimes, it's the best sign in the world. Because certain 1941 wheat pennies, especially those with rare die cracks, off-center strikes, repunched details, or unusual luster errors, have shocked the coin world before. Not all of them are valuable. Most are still worth only a few cents. But the rare ones, the ones with multiple anomalies stacked together, those are the ones that can explode in value. And this is where the story takes a turn. Because this wasn't just any 1941 penny. Under magnification, subtle irregularities began to appear. The kind that don't catch your eye at first, but once you see them, you can't unsee them. A faint doubling on the lettering. A slight misalignment in the strike. A surface pattern that suggested something went wrong during production. The dealer leaned back, quiet, then said the words that changed everything. "This needs to be authenticated." And just like that, a simple penny entered the world of high-end numismatics, where coins are no longer pocket change. They are history, mistakes, and secrets worth fighting over. But what makes a 1941 no-mint mark penny even remotely capable of reaching values like $1 million? It comes down to rarity, condition, and error combination. On their own, common 1941 pennies are everywhere. Millions were minted, but the extreme value appears only when a perfect storm happens. A high-grade specimen, a dramatic minting error, and preservation that defies time itself. Most of these coins were spent in wartime America. They were handled, scratched, worn down, and forgotten. Finding one in near-perfect condition is already rare. Finding one with a major mint error on top of that, that's where collectors start paying attention. And when collectors start paying attention, prices stop behaving normally. One auction story still circulates in collector circles. A 1941 wheat penny with an unusual striking error and exceptional preservation reportedly triggered a bidding war that escalated far beyond expectations. Dealers were shocked. Phones were ringing. Bids kept climbing. And for a moment, nobody in the room could believe they were arguing over a 1-cent coin. That's the moment people remember. Not because every 1941 penny is valuable, but because the rare ones change everything you think you know about pocket change. But here's where it gets even more intense. Because the biggest mistake collectors make is assuming rarity is obvious. It isn't. The most dangerous coins, the ones worth serious money, often look completely normal to the untrained eye. That's why so many people spend them without a second thought. And this is exactly how coins worth thousands, sometimes even approaching $1 million valuations, are lost forever. Back to our story. The coin was sent for evaluation. Days passed, then weeks. The anticipation built like a storm no one could see coming. The owner expected a small premium at best, maybe a collector's curiosity piece. But when the results came back, the tone shifted. It wasn't just a 1941 wheat penny anymore. It was a combination piece. A coin showing multiple anomalies that aligned in a way that specialists rarely see. Not the most extreme mint error ever recorded, but rare enough to make experts stop and recheck their own notes. And that's when the rumors started. Because in the world of coins, once a specimen like this enters discussion, value becomes unpredictable. Collectors don't just see metal. They see opportunity, history, and competition. But what truly drives the value of a 1941 no-mint mark penny into the extreme range is not just error alone. It's the story behind it, the condition, and the demand from collectors chasing the impossible, a perfect example of imperfection. Now imagine this sitting unnoticed in circulation for decades, passed from hand to hand during wartime, dropped in cash registers, forgotten in jars, surviving everything, and still existing today. That idea alone is what fuels the obsession. But there's another twist most people never hear about. Some 1941 pennies were struck under slightly misaligned dies due to production pressure during the early 1940s. These misalignments can create subtle visual shifts that, when paired with strong grading, become highly desirable. Not every example is valuable, but the rare combinations are what push coins into auction headlines. And this is why collectors never stop searching. Because somewhere out there, another coin like this could still be hiding. In a drawer, or even in pocket change that hasn't been checked closely. The real danger and excitement is that it looks completely normal. No flashing lights, no obvious gold shine, no dramatic difference from the pennies people ignore every day. Just a small copper coin carrying the date 1941, quietly waiting to be noticed. And that's what makes the hunt so addictive. But how do you actually identify one of these potentially valuable 1941 wheat pennies? First, look at the date clearly. It must read 1941. Then check for the absence of a mint mark under the date. That confirms Philadelphia origin. But that alone is not enough. The real clues are in the surface. Look closely for doubling in the lettering Liberty or In God We Trust. Even slight doubling can signal a valuable error. Then examine the edges of the coin for signs of weak strike or misalignment. Under light, rotate the coin slowly. If something looks off or uneven in the design, that's worth a second look. Condition is everything. The less wear, the higher the potential value. A coin that looks like it just left the mint is in a completely different category than one that's been heavily circulated. And finally, any unusual texture, die cracks, or raised lines across the surface should never be ignored. These small imperfections are exactly what collectors look for. But here's the most important truth of all. Most 1941 pennies are still worth just a cent. That's reality. But the rare ones, the truly unusual ones, are the reason stories of million-dollar discoveries even exist in the first place. Because every once in a while, a coin no one cared about becomes the center of a bidding war. And someone realizes too late that what they spent on candy was worth far more than they ever imagined. So if you've got old coins tucked away somewhere, forgotten in a jar, or hidden in a drawer, there's one final thing to remember. That ordinary penny you ignore might not be ordinary at all. This penny almost ended up forgotten in a jar of loose change. But coins from the same era have shocked collectors with values that reached astonishing levels. And what makes this story even more incredible is that millions of Americans have handled this date without realizing they could be holding one of the most fascinating treasures in coin collecting history. Imagine reaching into an old coffee can filled with pennies collected over decades. Most people would see nothing more than a handful of copper coins worth a few cents each. But hidden among those ordinary-looking pieces could be a 1944 Lincoln wheat penny with a story so unusual that collectors still talk about it today. At first glance, the 1944 no-mint mark wheat penny doesn't seem special. It carries the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front and the iconic wheat ears on the reverse. To the average person, it looks almost identical to countless other pennies. Yet behind that simple appearance lies a mystery born during one of the most dramatic periods in American history. The year was 1944. The world was in the middle of World War II. Factories were running around the clock. Resources were precious. Every metal mattered. The United States Mint had already experimented with different materials to support the war effort. In 1943, pennies were famously struck on zinc-coated steel instead of copper. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. When production switched back to copper in 1944, something extraordinary occurred. A tiny number of leftover steel blanks from 1943 somehow remained inside the minting equipment. Those forgotten steel planchets were accidentally struck with 1944 Lincoln penny designs. That mistake created one of the most legendary error coins in American numismatic history. Collectors spent decades searching for them. Dealers dreamed of finding one. And every new discovery sent waves of excitement through the hobby. Think about that for a moment. A single forgotten steel blank. A split-second mistake inside the mint. One coin slipping through quality control. That tiny accident transformed an ordinary penny into a treasure worth life-changing money. Collectors were shocked when the first example surfaced. Experts initially questioned whether such coins could even exist. After all, the mint had returned to copper production in 1944. Finding a steel 1944 penny seemed almost impossible. Yet the evidence was undeniable. The coins were real, and their rarity was breathtaking. Only a tiny number are believed to exist today. That extreme scarcity is what turned these errors into legends. But here's where the story becomes even more fascinating. Most 1944 pennies without a mint mark are common coins struck in Philadelphia. Millions upon millions were produced. Those normal examples are usually worth modest amounts depending on condition. However, hidden among the ordinary coins are varieties and errors that collectors aggressively pursue. Some feature dramatic die cracks. Others show doubled details. A few reveal unusual striking characteristics that can command significant premiums. One collector reportedly spent years searching through rolls of pennies before finding an unusual example that looked different from every other coin around it. The color was wrong. The weight felt unusual. The appearance immediately raised questions. At first, it seemed impossible. Could it really be one of the famous 1944 steel cents? Professional examination confirmed the incredible truth. The coin was genuine. What happened next stunned the entire coin world. News spread rapidly among collectors. Experts discussed the discovery. Auction houses took notice. And suddenly, a coin worth 1 cent became worth a fortune. Stories like these fuel the dreams of collectors everywhere. Because unlike many rare treasures locked away in museums, rare pennies occasionally appear in places nobody expects. Old jars, estate collections, inherited coin albums, forgotten drawers, bankrolls, pocket change. Every year, collectors continue searching because history has proven that remarkable discoveries still happen. And that possibility keeps the excitement alive. But the value story becomes even more dramatic. Some rare Lincoln cent errors have crossed auction blocks for hundreds of thousands of dollars. The most extraordinary examples have reached levels approaching or exceeding $1 million depending on rarity, condition, and collector demand. That is why headlines featuring $1 million continue to capture attention across the numismatic community. A tiny coin, a tiny mistake, a massive reward. It's the ultimate treasure hunting story. Yet many people miss the clues entirely. They glance at a coin for 1 second and toss it aside. They never check the date. They never examine the material. They never notice unusual characteristics. And they never realize what may have slipped. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. Experienced collectors understand that rare coin discoveries usually begin with careful observation. The smallest differences can make the biggest impact. A missing detail, an unusual surface, a wrong metal, a striking error. Those tiny clues often separate an ordinary coin from an extraordinary one. The 1944 no-mint mark Lincoln wheat penny perfectly demonstrates that principle. Millions were produced. Yet only a microscopic fraction possess characteristics capable of generating enormous collector interest. That reality creates the thrill. Every coin deserves a second look. Every date deserves attention. Every unusual feature deserves investigation. Because once in a while, the impossible becomes reality. Imagine finding a coin that survived decades unnoticed. It passed through countless hands. It traveled through stores and businesses. It sat in piggy banks and collections. And somehow nobody realized its true significance. Then one day, someone finally noticed. One moment changed everything. One discovery transformed an ordinary day into an unforgettable event. Collectors live for those moments. The excitement is impossible to describe. The realization that history is sitting in your hand. The possibility that a tiny piece of copper or steel could be worth a fortune. The understanding that treasures still exist. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. As awareness of rare 1944 error cents grew, counterfeit examples began appearing. Suddenly, collectors faced a new challenge. Not every unusual-looking coin was genuine. Some altered coins had dates changed from 1943 to 1944. Others were modified to imitate rare errors. That is why authentication became essential. Experts developed methods to identify genuine examples. Weight measurements, magnetic testing, microscopic examination, professional grading. These tools help separate authentic rarities from imitations. A genuine rarity can command astonishing prices. A counterfeit is worth very little. The difference can mean everything. And that's exactly why knowledge is power. The more you understand about Lincoln cents, the better your chances of recognizing something extraordinary. Many legendary discoveries happen because someone paid attention. Someone looked closer. Someone refused to assume a coin was ordinary. That mindset has produced some of the greatest finds in collecting history. And it continues today. Right now, somewhere in America, a forgotten coin collection may contain a remarkable penny waiting to be rediscovered. Right now, an inherited jar may hold a coin that nobody has examined properly. Right now, someone may unknowingly possess a treasure hidden in plain sight. Collectors are rushing to get their hands on coins with authentic rarity because opportunities become scarcer every year. The surviving population remains limited. Demand remains strong. Interest continues growing. And whenever a famous rarity appears at auction, excitement explodes throughout the hobby. Million-dollar headlines inspire new generations of collectors. They remind people that extraordinary stories can emerge from ordinary objects. They prove that history still holds surprises. And they encourage everyone to check their coins more carefully. So how can you identify a potentially valuable 1944 no-mint Mark Lincoln wheat penny? First, check the date carefully. Make sure it clearly reads 1944. Second, look beneath the date area. A no-mint mark example was struck in Philadelphia and should not display a mint mark. Third, examine the color. Most normal 1944 cents were struck from copper and display the familiar reddish-brown appearance. Fourth, pay close attention if the coin appears silver or gray instead of copper-colored. This is extremely important. A genuine 1944 steel cent is magnetic. A normal copper cent is not. That simple test can reveal whether further examination is warranted. Steel and copper planchets have different weights. Accurate measurements can provide valuable clues. Sixth, inspect the surfaces carefully for unusual errors, doubling, or striking abnormalities that may attract collector interest. Most importantly, avoid cleaning the coin. This is one of the biggest mistakes people make. Cleaning can damage surfaces and significantly reduce collector value. If you believe you found something unusual, preserve it exactly as it is. Then consider professional authentication from a respected grading service. Experts can determine whether your discovery is genuine and help establish its market significance. Because when it comes to legendary coins, certainty matters. The difference between an ordinary penny and a historic rarity may come down to details invisible to the untrained eye. And those details can change everything. One man's pocket change became a $1 million miracle. One accidental minting mistake created a collecting legend. One forgotten coin captured the imagination of generations. And somewhere out there, another remarkable discovery may still be waiting. This coin almost ended up in the trash, but what if I told you it later became the kind of penny collectors whisper about in auctions where bids climb into the $1 million range? And one verified example was said to reach nearly $1.6 million under the right conditions? It sounds impossible. A simple 1941 Lincoln wheat penny. No mint mark. Nothing flashy. Nothing that screams value. Just a small copper coin that millions of Americans once tossed into jars, drawers, and old coffee cans without a second thought. But hidden inside that ordinary appearance is a story that has shaken coin collectors for decades. Because in 1941, the world was standing on the edge of chaos. America was about to enter World War II. The U.S. Mint was under pressure, production was fast, and small errors slipped through the system more often than people realized. And sometimes, those mistakes were never corrected. They were released into circulation, quietly becoming some of the most sought-after coins in existence. Now imagine this. A coin like that slipping into your pocket change, traveling through decades, passing through hands that had no idea they were holding something that could one day be worth more than a house. Collectors say the 1941 no-mint Mark wheat penny is one of those mysterious survivors. Not because every version is rare, but because the rare ones hide in plain sight. And when they are found in the right condition, with the right errors, the value doesn't just rise, it explodes. Because most people think all 1941 pennies are the same. They are not. The difference between a 1-cent coin and a life-changing discovery can come down to microscopic details that only trained eyes ever notice. Some 1941 no-mint Mark Lincoln wheat pennies were struck with die irregularities. Tiny doubling on the lettering. Weak strikes on Lincoln's portrait. Unusual surface textures caused by worn dies still being used long after they should have been retired. These are not obvious mistakes. They are hidden signatures of chaos inside the minting process, and collectors go crazy for them. One experienced dealer once described it like this: you can hold two identical 1941 pennies in your hand, and one is worth 1 cent, and the other is worth a fortune. That's not exaggeration. That's the reality of error coin collecting. But here's where the story takes a darker turn. And then came the discoveries. In the early 2000s, collectors began re-examining old wheat pennies with modern magnification tools. What they found changed everything. Some 1941 no-mint mark pennies showed rare combinations of strike errors and near-perfect preservation. A few were graded extremely high by professional services. And once those coins hit auctions, the prices shocked even seasoned experts. Because suddenly, a penny that once bought a piece of candy was selling for thousands, then tens of thousands, and in extremely rare cases, approaching numbers that people only associate with luxury homes. But the legend didn't stop there. Whispers began circulating in collector circles about a handful of exceptional 1941 no-mint mark wheat pennies with extraordinary characteristics. Strong luster, full strike detail, rare die anomalies, coins so well preserved that they looked like they were dropped into circulation and immediately removed again. And according to collectors tracking private sales and auction trends, the most exceptional examples have been valued in ranges that push toward $1.6 million under perfect market conditions. Now, whether every claim reaches that number or not, one thing is undeniable. The demand is real, and the competition to find these coins is getting more intense every year. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. Because instead of disappearing into museums or private vaults, more of these coins kept resurfacing in the most unexpected places. Garage sales, old family inheritances, forgotten coin jars, even pocket change from grocery store transactions. One collector reportedly found a high-grade 1941 wheat penny inside a roll of coins from a small-town bank. Another discovery came from a jar that had been sitting untouched for decades in a kitchen cabinet. Ordinary people were suddenly stepping into the world of serious numismatics without even trying. And every time one of these coins surfaced, the same question echoed across the community. How many are still out there, hiding in plain sight? Because the truth is, no one knows. And that uncertainty is exactly what keeps the legend alive. Now let's talk about what makes a 1941 no-mint mark wheat penny potentially valuable enough to change someone's life. First, condition is everything. Coins that are heavily worn, scratched, or corroded lose most of their premium value. But coins that retain sharp detail, original luster, and clean surfaces enter a completely different category. Second, look closely at the strike. The lettering Liberty and the words "In God We Trust" can sometimes show doubling or irregular spacing. This is not always obvious to the naked eye. Under magnification, even a slight doubling effect can signal a rare die variation. Third, examine Lincoln's portrait. Weak strikes around the cheek, jawline, or hair details can indicate minting pressure issues that collectors actively seek. And fourth, the overall color matters more than most people realize. Original copper tones, ranging from red to deep brown red, often command higher interest than dark, corroded surfaces. But here is the part most beginners miss completely. Because even if you find a coin that looks special, its true value is only unlocked when professionals confirm its condition and rarity. That's where grading services come in. Without certification, even a rare penny might be treated as ordinary by serious buyers. And that is how fortunes are lost. Not because the coin wasn't valuable, but because no one recognized its importance. Collectors often say the biggest mistake is simple: spending time searching for perfection instead of learning to recognize potential. Because sometimes, the difference between a normal penny and a life-changing discovery is just a tiny misalignment in the strike, a subtle doubling, or a surface that has survived time better than the rest. And the emotional part of this story cannot be ignored. Think about it. Right now, somewhere in America, someone could be holding a jar of old coins, completely unaware that a 1941 no-mint mark wheat penny inside it might be worth thousands, or even in extreme cases, approaching values that reach into the realm of $1 million. That is what makes this coin so powerful. Not just its rarity, but its accessibility. It is not locked in a museum. It is not buried in a vault. It once passed through everyday hands, and may still be doing so today. But what if the next one discovered is the most valuable of all? What if it's sitting in a drawer right now, mixed with ordinary change, waiting for someone to finally take a closer look? Because every collector knows one simple truth. The greatest discoveries are never the ones you expect. They are the ones you overlook. And the 1941 no mint Mark Lincoln wheat penny is the perfect example of that hidden possibility.